Jim, one of my focuses in my pastoral ministry is I do a lot of shepherding. I'm talking to people and counseling with people all the time. And so I think for me as a pastor and my congregants, one of the things that comes up often is there's a forgetting that politicians are actually people. And like you have a family, you have emotions, you have struggles, you have desires and ambitions and those kinds of things. What is the emotional cost of being a politician, and how can me as a pastor, how can I help my congregation learn how to pray and help you?
Well, I'm glad to hear that some folks recognize that we're real people and have emotions and have feelings, and that we're not just some, archetypical bad person. But yeah, we do have emotions, and we do things at the Capitol that sometimes dredge up emotions that we don't want to talk about at parties. For a long time, I have personally had to deal with growing up as an abused kid. So my dad literally beat the stuffings out of me on a regular basis. We had an opportunity at the Capitol to decide whether we were going to continue funding a governor's task force on child abuse. And a lot of my colleagues didn't want to fund that again because Republicans apparently don't always want to spend money on things. That might be a stereotype that's out there, but I knew the minute we began talking about it that I had to stand up and talk about my past. I didn't want to talk about that.
Sure.
I spent the better part of my life trying to forget about the fact that sometimes my dad would beat me until I couldn't stand up. I'd go to the hospital as a result of a beating. But I knew that horrible experience could benefit other kids in the state of Minnesota. So I was a freshman. I had just been elected to the House of Representatives, but God said, stand up and share your story. And it's hard. I struggle with it to this day. But I knew that I had to share with my colleagues, and in turn I've also shared with the full House of Representatives that we're tasked with protecting people, and that I had this experience. And again, I struggle with it. And when I talk about it, I get very emotional. And sometimes I still struggle with bad dreams and memories. But what I said to my colleagues is, if I can speak out and I can prevent another kid from getting a beat down, then that's the right thing to do. But that comes at a huge cost because you're exposing yourself, and that's hard. We don't always want to do that, and it becomes very, very uncomfortable. And then you walk away from that, and on the floor I shared my experience, and then I had to leave the floor. I was just so emotionally spent at that point that I couldn't be there anymore.
How does your family, how does the family dynamic with you being a politician, how does your wife feel about that? What kind of weight is she carrying? How can we as pastors and church members pray for her and your family? How can we help in that way?
Pray for us. My wife is, I've been married for 30 years and she's a huge blessing. But sometimes I share things with her that happen down there that probably are more difficult for her to hear than me. I signed up for this. I was just dumb enough to say, oh, I'll go do this. Another example, a couple years ago, I was carrying a bill, and the person that was on the other side of the issue came up afterwards and told me that they hoped that I was shot and killed in front of my family. I shared that with my wife, and she just couldn't understand how another person could say that. And that caused her to just start crying. And I think that the emotional cost also is my kids seeing their dad getting attacked locally or on TV, because I've been very fortunate to get TV coverage on some of the things. But you've got an 11-year-old daughter all the way up to a 23-year-old son right now, and they've seen their dad getting attacked. That has an emotional toll on them as well, because they think dad's just off doing as best as he can. and here they see that people are literally wishing death on their dad in front of them. So, I have to ask for people to pray for my family to be able to walk away from some of that and leave it behind them. But yeah, there's a huge emotional toll sometimes, but I think there's an emotional toll in any job that you do. But for an elected official, we would just ask that you pray for us and lift us up, and maybe come alongside of us when you know that we're going through something that is likely to bring up memories that are tough.
Is there something specific you would want? Just say our regular church member, our sweet lady who's in her 70s, who's a prayer warrior.
Yeah.
Is there something that I could specifically individually say to her, this is what you can pray for Jim Nash? What would that be? What would you say right now?
I always ask for wisdom. Book of James is pretty clear on that one. Because sometimes, you just feel, man, I'm just a dumb ox doing a job, and I need God's wisdom, strength, and, sometimes softening your heart, because, sometimes you're down there and you feel like you're doing battle, and you forget that the person you're going toe-to-toe with, even though you disagree with what they believe, that they're a person too, and you have to be respectful. And my job down there, I have a reputation of being kind of a scrapper, and that's a role I take seriously, but I also have to temper that with saying, okay, I can't make this personal. I have to make this about policy, because if I attack this person, then I'm doing the job wrong. So wisdom, strength, tenderness of heart, and just health, because if you work around the clock, and there are days that we literally work around the clock, you wear down and you get sick.